Hello and welcome friends. In Indian economy, we are going to discuss today nature of Indian economy, which is unit number 2. And before moving on to discussing the nature of the Indian economy, we need to understand the different types of economic systems. We are going to discuss them today. Now, in common lingo, many times we call a particular economic system as leftist or a rightist kind of an economic system. We'll understand why we use these terminologies. Please understand, on your left is the kind of economic system which is known as the leftist kind of economic system, and on the right is the kind of economic system known as the rightist. Please understand, these are the two different types of economic systems that we have. Now, one type of economic system is known as the planned economic system or command and control economic system. Many a times we also refer to it as communist economic systems. The other type is known as capitalist economic system. Many times we refer to it as free market economy. Fine, we'll understand why we use these terminologies, but first of all let us understand what are the leftist kind of economic systems. Here we have centralized planning. Every aspect of the economy is planned by a central authority. Many a times this is the government which is involved in centralized planning. It could also be army in some cases. Many places where it is army rule, the army does the planning for the whole economy. Fine. So one element is centralized planning. And what do we plan basically? What we mean by centralized planning? All the resources which are there, how they are going to be allocated, how much of the output would be produced, and how that would be allocated to different customers, consumers. Every single thing is decided and planned by the central authority. Let me give an example. Suppose you have limited amount of coal. Now how much of the coal is going to be used for generating electricity for the household sector, घरों में बिजली के लिए? How much of the coal would be used for electricity generation for the industrial sector? बिजनेसेस को, इंडस्ट्रीज को, फैक्ट्रीज को बिजली देने के लिए कितना कोल इस्तेमाल होगा, कितना कोयला इस्तेमाल होगा? Now every single thing is decided by the government or the central authority. Likewise, how many of the cars can be produced in an economy, for example? How much wheat would be produced in an economy? How much white goods, refrigerators or TVs would be produced in an economy? Every single thing, all these aspects are decided by the central authority. So this is the reason why these kind of economic systems are known as command and control authority, because the command comes from a central authority and that command controls how the economy is going to function. So they are also known as command and control economies. And again, this is the reason why they are also known as planned economies. Fine. Again, in such economic systems, all the factors of production, be it the land, be it the other factors of production including capital, money, the machinery, such items like machinery, they are all considered to be under the ownership of the government. So it may so happen that I own a particular piece of land, but still I do not have the ownership of that land. The ultimate ownership lies with the government. Fine. So this is what happens in these kind of economic systems, right? And there is absolutely no right to private property. So as I said, I may be tilling a land and it might have been tilled by my forefathers also, and it might belong to me from generations, but still I do not have any property right over that piece of land, and that property, that piece of land would be considered to be a property of the central authority, the government. Fine. So this is what happens in these kind of economic systems. Now what is good about these kind of economic systems? I'll be talking about the good aspects in green color and the bad aspects in the red color, right? First thing is societal interests are prioritized. The government decides how much to produce, what to produce depending on the interest of the society. Fine. For example, if it is felt that the people require coal, people require electricity, and it is very important for the people to have electricity, then the government will do what? Government will divert all the coal which is there to generate electricity for the household sector, for houses, for use by the families, and it would not allocate any coal for electricity generation for the industrial sector. I'm just giving you an example, right? So this is how societal interests are prioritized. So individual interests are not prioritized. Interests of the businesses are of no concern. Ultimate thing is, what is the overall interest of the society, right? So this is one good aspect of these kind of economic systems. And then shared minimum standards of living. The government or the central authority ensures that the standard of living is almost same. There are no differences between different sections of people. There are no highly rich people over there, or there are no poor sections in the society. All the people have almost the same standards of living, and they have the same kind of earnings, and they have the same amount of money for use. They have the same amount of resources. This is what is expected in an economic system which is a leftist economic system. This is what is aspired for in such economic systems. Fine. So you don't find too many poor people there, or you don't find too many super rich. You find people almost having the same standards of living. So if a particular family is owning, let's say, a bike, then most of the other families would also be owning bike. There would be hardly any family which would be owning an aeroplane or a helicopter, right? So shared minimum standards of living. Fine. In fact, such economic systems are known for their stress on a particular ideal. That ideal is from each according to his capacity, to each according to his requirement. What do we mean by this? We'll extract resources from people according to their capacity, and we'll provide resources according to the requirement. Let me give you an example. If I own 2 cars and somebody else owns just 1 car, and the government requires cars, I'm just giving you an example. So the government would take away both my cars, and government would take away his 1 car. It would not happen that the government would take away his car and the government would take away just 1 car from me. The government would take away all the cars that I have. So this is what we mean by from each according to his capacity. So we'll extract resources from every individual according to whatever he has, and we'll provide according to whatever he needs. Right? Now I'm giving another example. Now suppose the government wants to redistribute the cars in the economy so that everybody has the same number of cars. So government has taken away my 2 cars, and government has taken away 1 car from the other person, right, who had only 1 car. Now the government would do what? It would redistribute the cars among the different families such that every family has car according to its requirements. So a family of 10 would probably be allotted 2 cars, and a family of just 1 or 2 individuals would probably be allotted just 1 car. So this is what we mean by to each according to their requirements. Fine. So this is the ideal of communist kind of economic system. Now these are the good aspects, but let's talk about the bad aspects also. Denial of individual freedom. Now there is no individual freedom. Now have a look why there is no individual freedom. You do not have any right to property. You do not decide how much to produce using this property. Suppose you have land, but you cannot decide how much wheat to grow on that land because that has to be decided by the central authority. Fine. So in that sense, there is no individual freedom. There is lot of corruption also. Why? Because to ensure that everybody has the same level of living, same standard of living, to ensure that there is proper allocation to different resources, we need people who will ensure this. So we might need inspectors. I'm not talking about police inspectors. I'm talking about inspectors who will look into what is happening in a factory. So for example, factory inspectors. We look people who can ensure that the resources are equally distributed, who will keep a check on how much of the quantity is getting produced. So we need people for that, and these people would form the bureaucracy. They would become government servants, and they on behalf of the government would take care of all these things. They would ensure that the resources are allocated properly, but then there is a chance that they become corrupted and they indulge in corruption. For example, if I am owning 2 cars, but I don't want to give away my 2 cars. The government says that you'll have to give away 2 cars because we are going to redistribute the cars such that every family has 1 car. Fine. But I don't want to give away my 2 cars. So what will I do? I'll go to the factory inspector and I'll tell him, please show on record that I only have 1 car and don't take away my second car. I'll pay you maybe 2,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees. So this leads to corruption. Again, in such cases, in such economies, there is worker extremism also. Workers are very extremist, aggressive kind in these kind of economies. Why? Because in such kind of economies, worker interests are prioritized. If there is a factory and the workers are working there, the interest of the factory owners would not be prioritized. It is the workers whose interests would be prioritized because the government wants the standards of living to be almost similar. So they would prioritize the interest of the worker. They would support the worker against the management of the factory. So worker extremism is seen in these kind of economic systems. Let's talk about the capitalist economic system. Free market economy. Why do we call it free market economy? Free enterprise. Anybody can open up a business. Anybody can start a business. Anybody can indulge in any commercial activity of his or her choice. Production, distribution and consumption depends on market forces. So here, now let's understand the contrast. Here everything was decided based on what the government said, or based on what the government felt, or what the government's command was. But here, how much will be produced, to whom the production would be distributed, and what will be the quantities, who will consume whatever has been produced, everything will be decided by the market forces of demand and supply. For example, how much of the coal would be produced, how much of the coal would be used for electricity generation would depend on which sector is able to pay more for the electricity generated from coal. So if household sector is paying 2 rupees per unit of electricity, and electricity generation, if the household sector is paying rupees 2 per unit of electricity generated, while the industrial sector is ready to pay rupees 4, what will a particular individual who is generating electricity using the coal would do? He would sell all his electricity to the industrial sector, right? Again, let me give another example. How many cars would be produced in such economies is not decided by the government. It is decided by what is the demand. How many people are looking to buy a car. Depending on that, the different businesses decide how much quantity to produce, how many cars to produce. So this is the difference between the two economic systems, and there is absolutely no government intervention. As I said, free enterprise. How much to produce, whom to distribute the produced items, and who is going to consume the produced items, everything is decided by the market forces. Absolutely no government intervention. And there is a dominant role of private sector. Private individuals, private businesses play a dominant role. They decide how much to produce, which all things to produce. Fine. So if that says there is a dominant role of private sector, while here the dominant role was for the government, and that is why we had a inflated bureaucracy, we had a bloated bureaucracy, large number of bureaucrats, inspectors, factory inspectors, regulatory bodies taking care of everything. But here such things are, if at all they are present at a very minimal level, right? Now let us understand what is good here. It stimulates entrepreneurship. Now the entrepreneurs, the businesses have the freedom to decide whatever they want to do. So it will lead to more entrepreneurs coming up. They would want to set up businesses. This is not the case with these kind of economic systems, the planned economic systems. Again, what is the problem in these kind of economic systems? However, there is no income inequity. You find a lot of inequality in the society. There are super rich. There are people who are earning crores and crores of rupees every single day, and there are people who are not even earning 30 to 40 rupees in a particular day. So these kind of inequities exist in such societies. And consumerism. What do you mean by consumerism? Now, everything is decided based on what the consumers want, right? So many a times what the businesses would do, they would encourage the consumers to purchase those items which are actually not required, but they would make you purchase those items by creating those needs. For example, a shampoo is not something that is very, very important for your survival, but you still buy it because there are companies who have made you understand that shampoo is fundamental to your existence, because if you don't use a shampoo, then you will suffer from dandruff, and then your status in the society would also suffer. Your boss would not like you, your fiancé would not like you. So now this is what consumerism is. So consumerism exists in these societies. Why? Because the businesses actually encourage such tendency so that they can sell their goods. Fine. So this is one problem with these kind of economic systems. Now let me tell you one thing very, very clearly. Though we have talked about these economic systems, but there are no clear-cut demarcations. You would never find. Now I'm giving you a diagram to make you understand what we mean by leftist and rightist. We have discussed this earlier. Pure blind economy, leftist economy, and towards the left, and here it is the pure free market economy or the capitalist economy. Here it is the pure plant command and control kind of economic system. Fine, but please understand, there is no economy in this particular, in the whole globe, which can be said to be 100% purely planned or can be said to be 100% purely free. Let me talk about USA, which is considered to be a free economy, but there also you have heard about how the government provides medical insurance to the poor and the downtrodden, which is an element of, let me go back, which is basically an element of this particular kind of communist kind of economic system, where government tries to provide minimum standards of living to every single individual. Fine. So there is a Medicare and Medicaid. You might have heard of Obamacare, because Obama actually the earlier president brought this particular scheme there. So that is meant to help out the poor and the downtrodden, so that in case of any medical emergency they receive some assistance. So now this is an element of communism, or this is an element of command and control in a pure free market economy. So does not exist any pure free market economy. Likewise, if you talk about North Korea also, pure planned economy, but it's not considered to be a pure planned economy, though it tilts towards this side. Why? The reason is very, very simple. If you take example of, for example, how many toothpaste are being produced there, that is not decided by the government. The toothpaste, how many to produce and which all brands would get sold, that is not decided by the government, that is decided by the free market forces. So even in North Korea, which might be considered to be a communist country, a communist economic system, there also you find elements of free market economy, since how many rubber bands, how many toothpaste, how many pens to produce, it's not decided by the government, it's decided by the free market forces, right? So there is nothing like an absolutely free market economy or an absolutely planned economy, right? However, we can say that economic systems may be shown on this kind of a continuum. For example, here we can understand that North Korea tilts towards being a leftist economic system. It is closer to this kind of economic system, while United States is farther from it. So United States has less element of pure planned economy and more elements of free market economy. Fine. So United States and Japan are more towards pure free market economy, and France and Sweden again are more towards free market economy. China can be said to be somewhere in the middle. North Korea is more tilted towards the planned economic systems, towards the communist economic systems. India is somewhere here along with China. And such economies which have a mix of both are called as mixed economies. Remember this. Now these are mixed economy with socialist or communist leanings. These are mixed economies with capitalist leanings, because they are more tilted towards the capitalist economic systems. They are more tilted towards the planned economic systems. Fine. So thank you very much for your time. That's it.